So I tried everything, and I came to the end of my rope. So I started training heavy when I was in ninth grade, because I was a smaller kid. I was about 5 foot, 100 pounds in ninth grade. And I became a bit of a target for bullies. I was a little bit slow on the puberty end, so I wasn't as thick and as big as other guys, and I realized this. So I started weight training. I started with broomsticks and weight jugs, water jugs on there, and benching, curling. I eventually got my first Weider cement weight set in 96. 95, and just really kind of took off to lifting in high school and got really serious about it. I benched 315 in 11th grade. Not as impressive as some people that I knew that benched it in 7th grade. A guy named Sean Frankel benched 315 in 7th grade. But I think
I weighed 315 in 7th grade.
I actually jumped into a powerlifting bench press competition when I was 17 on a whim because my friend was competing and I got hooked. So June 1999, 22 years ago almost, I started and I got bit with the bug, and I loved it ever since. But even when I was in high school, before I started competing, I would go to the gym. It was a key card gym. Well, there wasn't cards back then. It was a physical key. You'd have to change it out every month and leave your key, get a new key. So what I would do is I would come in on a Saturday night before 11 o'clock when the gym actually would shut off and lock electronically. So I would go in and I would train all night by myself while everyone was out partying. I would go and lock myself in the gym. I would do all my extra stuff, bench pressing, squats, curls, all that stuff. And that's how I spent my 11th and 12th grade year in the gym at night. And I kind of just fell in love with it. And here we are 20-some years later, 22 years later, and it's all been a blur. And it's been my biggest focus for the last 20 years. And it's been a blessing and a curse, honestly, because with the good comes the bad. There's, the yin and the yang. There's nothing good without a shadow side, and that was my life for the last 20 years. So I've been pretty fortunate. Up until last year was the first time I actually tore a muscle off the bone or a tendon and had to get it repaired. So I'd earned many of those over the years. I've had minor injuries like fascial tears, strains, which is basically a tear that just doesn't avulse off the bone or tendon. And I've had plenty of those in my hamstrings, pecs, shoulders, back. But the big injury that I've had, besides the labral tear and pec tears, was my back. And that started back in 2009. I fell on an obstacle course and landed right on my butt and still finished the course, but then was pretty much laid up for a couple days. And like any smart, intelligent lifter, I proceeded ahead over the next 2 months, competed, and did my first 1,100 pound squat in competition and my first 800 pound deadlift, first 2,600 plus total. And from there, I would have times where my back would feel better, and then times where it would get worse and worse, and it kept ramping up. But knowing what I know now is I never gave the pain time to heal, desensitize and wind down. I was doing all the typical wrong things, the bending over and over, trying to build a core of iron, the side bends, the reverse hypers. And eventually it took me to a place where I was gonna have to walk away from powerlifting. I wasn't enjoying life anymore. And my last ditch effort was reaching out to Dr. McGill in March of 2013 and then seeing him in May of 2013. And that was the start of my new path, which is hard to believe it's been 8 years now, where I walked into Stu's lab clinic training center. And I'd failed so many times. I'd done the shots. I went pre-op with neurosurgeons, orthopedic surgeons, and that was the end of my road right there. So I walked into the laboratory that day and said, I know nothing. Stu, take the reins. I'm starting over as a complete beginner. I went in there as if I'd never lifted a weight before, and we totally deconstructed every single thing about the way I moved, what I thought I knew about strength training, what I knew about my back pain, back injuries in general. And we sorted through the assessment in about 4 hours, and he sat me down and he said, Brian, if you were my son, I would urge you to retire. Further injury and destabilization to the area of your back could lead to permanent disability or worse. So I can probably get you out of pain, but you need to write off any type of heavy lifting going forward. And I looked at my wife I looked back at Dr. McGill and I said, well, you said you can get me out of pain, so I'm going to lift again. I'm going to lift. And he goes, okay, first things first, maybe you're right. Maybe you do get back to lifting. And if you do, we'll write a book about it. And that's Gift of Injury that was released in 2017. And I held him to it. And I said, hey, after I got back and won the Arnold twice, post-injury, I said, what about that book? And he goes, I'm ready. So we knocked it out in 2016, 2017. And the book's almost been live for 4 years. And the takeaway from back injury is it's not a life ender. It's not a career ender. When treated properly, you can get back and potentially get back to being better than you ever were pre-injury. My best squat pre-injury was 1185. My best squat post-injury was 1306. It was hard for me to take a step back because the guys in the gym were pushing for powerlifting meets. I am competitive, so I would get shit from the guys. I'd be on the ground doing seal Pilates. There was one time when we were here doing a learn to train, and I just got my back sorted out. I just pulled about 6 months of my follow-up, and we came here for a learn to train in 2013. And there was the big dogs here lifting and everything, and I was on the ground doing seal Pilates, as Dave said. But it didn't matter. I didn't even consider maybe I can just go over and lift a little bit. Man, I've been burned so many times before, there was nothing that you could do to get me to deviate from my plan. So I took that same ego that believed I could squat 1,300 pounds, that had squatted those big weights and won those big meets before, and I harnessed it and focused it on the task at hand. And that was moving well, not picking the scab, and only doing what I'm told to do. So that ego that also helped destroy me, that has helped me, it's a monster. If I don't keep it on track, I'll end up in Columbus not coming back for 3 weeks, disappearing because I'll drink and I'll do this and I'll do that. Things get out of control if you let it, right? That same ego. So it has to be checked. So aside from the lifting and the nutrition and the supplementation and the hormones and everything that I've studied, I actually like to take my Raptor out and Baja it. I've been doing that a lot lately. Actually, when I pulled in earlier here today, I passed right by the EFS center here and drove around and whipped around in that gravel over there for a little bit and was hoping I didn't crash my truck before I came in here. So I've been taking it off-roading in Baja and having fun with that. But hobbies is hanging out with my little girls now. So I'm a father of two. I had twin girls a year ago, and my life has changed quite a bit in the last year. So you add in the COVID pandemic and everything. It's been an interesting year. But the hobby is just learning to be a father and learning to take care of these little girls the best that I can right now. And that's definitely been an interesting hobby or life change because I never planned on having kids, and here I am, almost 40 years old, and I have two one-year-old girls that I have to spend time to be able to relate to them because I'm from a way different generation, and as they're growing up, I want to make sure I'm in tune with what they're dealing with and the current events and everything. So right now, my focus is on being a good dad, learning how to be a good husband and a good parent. It's right now, children, they need role models and especially the parent. It all starts at home. So what I don't want to do is I don't want to look back like I could over my powerlifting career or my lifting, my meets, my accomplishments, my failures. I don't want to look back over fatherhood and be able to point to as many failures that I have in powerlifting and fatherhood. I wasn't there for this. I didn't do that. That's the biggest reason why I'm walking away from the sport. There's the mental aspect of not being available and such, but I want to be available physically 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now. We see so many people that have powerlifted for so long, and I got my 20 years in. Powerlifting's been able to provide me with so many things. Here I am, talking to you guys, hanging out with Dave Tate, doing a table talk, and we're talking about everything that is derived from me powerlifting, starting 22 years ago. So I love it, but it's time for me to focus on helping more people, coaching people, and moving on to that next phase. So during this time, a lot of things changed. I came off for a while. I didn't train so hard. So I ramped back up over a year and a half to hit that big squat. And then I had bicep surgery. So I took some time off and just learned to enjoy life more. I learned to enjoy it more in 2019. I learned to do it more in 20. So when the bicep surgery happened, I didn't give a shit about training. I just chilled for a while. I ate. I got fatter. And then I worked on getting unfat. But that also gave me time to put in effort and focus into the other guys, because they came up and helped me do something no one had ever done before. So I focused on them for a bit, and when my arm was ready to start coming out of the sling after a week or two, I eased back into training. I got on the belt squats. I started doing a little bit of grip work. I started letting it get the arm fully extended. And what I've done since I've been able to lift again is I still do the squat, I still do the bench, I still do the deadlift, but I've scaled back the intensity. The volume's still there. And Dr. McGill and I talked about how just getting away from load period, it would be like suicide for me. So I'm going to continue to squat, bench, and deadlift over the next couple of years and just slowly start ramping down the weights. More general fitness. I'm going to take my walks longer. I'll probably start walking, incline. I'll trail walk more. I'll start playing with the kids more. It's going to be general health as the focus. More suitcase carries, more core work, stir the pot, squats, benches, and deadlifts. It's definitely going to be a lot more general fitness oriented and to be harder to kill. So I want to be remembered as a person that always showed up to compete. I've competed in Columbus over 10 times, home of Westside Barbell and Lexington. I've done all their meets. I beat those guys. I lost to them. I never ran from anybody. So as far as a power lifter, I was a gamer, and I would use every competitive edge. So people are going to remember me as a bit of a scoundrel at times for some of the things that I've done and said just to get an edge on people. But I want to be remembered as a just person that was fair. So maybe not the nicest person, not the best person, but someone who's just. And I think that my overall legacy of turning from top lifter to someone that helps someone will be, it'll be a good way for me to give back, because I've learned so much, and to help people. I mean, definitely if people have a hurt back, help them, but the people I want to talk to the most right now are the people that have not had a back injury or aren't aware of a back injury they have, to check out the methods that I talk about. In best case scenario, you avoid the pitfalls that I fell in. So that's my life's mission now. To help prevent people from getting really jacked up and to pull the most athleticism out of their body as possible. And the people that are hurt, to get them back on track and show them that back injury is not a career ender. And I feel like that's basically my calling now.